Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th canto, 10th canto, 83rd chapter, beginning with, we'll be speaking. Anyway, I was hoping we would put 38. Is it possible? Can we put verse 38? That is the verse we'll be discussing. All the other verses are just leading up to that verse. So we'll recite verse 38, and then I'll come back and lead up to that, because there's no significant purports. Dasibi sarva sampadvi bhattibhya ratta vajibi ayudhani maharhani dado purnasya bhaktita Dasibi sarva sampadvi bhatti bharata vajibi ayudhani maharani tada purnasya bhaktita Dasibi sarva sampadvi bhattibhya ratta vajibi ayudhani maharani tado purnasya bhaktita. Vaishnavi. Asive Sagabambasvi. Sadhupurnasya Bhaktita. Sivi Sarasambhavi. Dasi be, along with maidservants. Sarva, all. Sampad be, endowed with riches. Bhatta, with infantry soldiers. Iba, soldiers riding elephants. Rata, soldiers riding chariots. Bajibi, and soldiers riding horses. Ayudhani, weapons. Maha arhani, extremely valuable. Tadao, he gave. Purnasya, to the perfectly complete Lord. Bhaktita, out of devotion. A translation and purport by the servants of Srila Prabhupada. With devotion, he presented the perfectly complete Lord with a number of maidservants bedecked with precious ornaments. Accompanying these maidservants were guards walking on foot, others riding elephants, chariots, and horses. He also gave the Lord extremely valuable weapons. Everyone can please repeat. With devotion, he presented the perfectly complete Lord with a number of maidservants bedecked with precious ornaments. Accompanying these maidservants were guards walking on foot, and others riding elephants, chariots, and horses. He also gave the Lord extremely valuable weapons. Purport. The Supreme Lord is Purna, perfect and complete in himself. He requires nothing for his satisfaction. Knowing this, a pure devotee makes offerings to the Lord only out of love, bhaktita, with no expectation of material profit. And on his part, the Lord happily accepts even a small gift of flowers, tulasi leaves, and water when it has been offered in love. So now we're going to go back to verse 20, which was 19 was the last one recited. Just read the Leela and understanding why Lakshmana, all the other queens spoke 1 or 2 verses, and she like 20, almost 20 verses. So seems like she's a little puffed up. But anyway, there's an explanation for that. So I'll just read the Sanskrit very quickly, and then we'll end the translation. Shrutvaita sarvato bhupa ayayor matapitu purnam sarvastra shasta tatpagya sopadhyaya sahasrasha. Having hearing of this, thousands of kings expert in shooting arrows and in wielding other weapons converged from all directions on my father's city, accompanied by their military teachers. So the previous verses, for those that were not here, spoke about that to win her hand, there was a fish hanging from the ceiling, and the idea in Arjuna's case was to hit the eye of the fish, but in this case it was to with an arrow sever the tie so that the fish would fall from the ceiling. But you couldn't see the fish. You could only see the reflection in the water. And so that's the background. Om Jnana Timirandasya Kanangjana Shalakaya Chakshuru Militam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakada Mahyam Tadati Swapadantikam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Rishatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So in this first verse we read, these soldiers were very expert. It wasn't just any soldier. So verse 21, Pitra Sampujita Sarve Yatra Viryam Yata Baya Adadu Sasharam Chapam Bedhum Parshadi Madhya. My father properly honored each king according to his strength and seniority. Then those whose minds were fixed on me took up the bow and arrow, and one by one tried to pierce the target in the midst of the assembly. Purport. According to the Acharyas, only those kings who were extremely intent on winning the hand of the princess even dared to try to shoot the target. So, as Krishna says in Bhagavad-gita, that if one that akirtir maranad ati chirati, that if you, worse than death is to be dishonored. So these are Kshatriyas. So they're not going to try to pierce or to cut the fish if they think they're going to lose. Just like when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was a young boy, Nimai Pandit. So the Digvijay Pandit came, and the Brahmins heard he was coming. They all went to hide because they thought, if he defeats me, it will be very embarrassing. So they went to hide. But one Brahmin couldn't quite get away quick enough. But instead of being defeated, he said, "Oh, you should speak with Nimai Pandit first." And then he thought by that diversionary tactic, he could get away. But that was out of pride. Kshatriyas must have some pride. Otherwise, how can they rule? So, but a pure devotee will use that pride in glorifying Krishna, like Arjuna. He gave all credit to Krishna, but Krishna wanted to give all credit to him. So this is the situation. Adaya Bhatshijan ke chitsam sajam kartum anishvara akushtam jam samutkritsya peturekem unahata. Some of them picked up the bow but could not string it, and so they threw it aside in frustration. Some managed to pull the bowstring toward the tip of the bow, only to have the bow spring back and knock them on the ground. Sajam kitva pare virya maghadam bashta chedipa bhimo duryodhana karno navidam tat avastitim. A few heroes, namely Jarasandha, Shishupal, Bhima, Duryodhana, Karna, and the king of Ambastha, succeeded in stringing the bow, but none of them could find the target. Purport: these kings were very strong physically, but they were not skillful enough to find the target. Now here we see Bhima, but we know that Bhima never got married, so this happened before he took his vow. Because it was normal Kshatriya. Actually, Bhima was celebrated. Actually, he was chosen as a candidate to lead the Rajasuya Yajna because of his fame of being a Kshatriya without a wife. A brahmachari Kshatriya, very unusual situation. But even he couldn't do it. He was so strong. Mutsyabhasam jale vriksha gyat pachatad avastitim partoyato swijad bhanam nachchitat pishe param. Then Arjuna looked at the reflection of the fish in the water and determined its position. When he carefully shot his arrow at it, however, he did not pierce the target, but merely grazed it. Purport: according to the explanation of Srila Sridhar Swami, Arjuna was more expert a marksman than any other kings, but his physical strength was not adequate to the task of shooting it with perfect accuracy. Rajayeshu nipiteshu bhagyamansu manishu Bhagavandanur adaya sajjam kritpata lilaya tasmin sandaya vishiktham matsyam viksha skrijjale chitve shunapa tayatam surye cha vichiti stiti. After all the arrogant kings had given up, their pride broken, the Supreme Personality of Godhead picked up the bow, easily strung it, and then fixed his arrow upon it. As the sun stood in the constellation Abhijit, he looked at the fish in the water only once, and then pierced it with the arrow, knocking it to the ground. Purport: each day the sun passes once through the lunar constellation Abhijit, making the period most auspicious for victory. As pointed out by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti, on this particular day, the Muhurta of Abhijit coincided with high noon, further emphasizing Lord Krishna's greatness by making the target all the more difficult to see. So, another point is that Krishna, when he appears or he does something, everything conforms to that. And so, because he would be glorious, therefore the most glorious constellation appeared, and even made it difficult for Krishna to see, therefore making his glories even greater. Just like when Nityananda and Haridas Thakur went out to preach on the order of the Lord, and they met Jagai Madai. Then, after Jagai Madai chased them away, they went back to Lord Chaitanya, and Lord Chaitanya said, "Forget about them. They're not worth it." But Nityananda thought, if I can convert them, then Lord Chaitanya's glories will be known all over the three worlds, and therefore let me do it. So this should be our determination. Just like today, we're celebrating the Sankirtan effort. So we should have this determination. We must glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And, whatever our service is, if our service is pujari, just like today, we dress the deities in the most beautiful way, so that everyone can understand, as Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, that Krishna is the best dresser. He's the best dresser. Although we're dressing him, even though we may be dressing him, he gives us the intelligence how to dress him by our devotion, which is the main purpose of the main verse. So, Divi dundu bayo nedur jaya shabda yuta bhuvi devascha gushamasaram mumuchur harsha vibalaha. Kettle drums resounded in the sky, and on the earth people shouted, Jai, Jai. Overjoyed, the demigods showered flowers. Tadrangam avisham aham kalam dupurnabhyam padbyam pragriha kanakojvala ratnamalam nutne niviha paridhaya cha kaushikagriye sabrida hasyabadana kabadidita shrak. Just then, I walked over onto the ceremonial ground, the ankle bells on my feet gently tinkling. I was wearing new garments of the finest silk tied with a belt, and I carried a brilliant necklace fashioned with gold and jewels. There was a shy smile on my face, and a wreath of flowers in my hair. Sridhar Swami states that Sri Lakshmana was so excited by remembering how she obtained the Supreme Personality of Godhead that she forgot her natural shyness and went on to describe her own triumph. So this is, if we read the first verses, the first queens, when they speak, they out of shyness and out of humility, which are natural qualities for a woman when there's a culture. Nowadays, there's not much culture, so of course here in India there is more, but that's also disappearing due to the age of Kali. So why is Sri Lakshmana so seemingly so proud? And she's considered the youngest of the principal queens, and still, Satyabhama was much more well-known, famous queen. So why is she speaking so much? It says here she was excited. Our acharyas explain, not only she was excited, but she was in great ecstasy. Weren't the other queens in ecstasy? Yes. Why was her ecstasy so much greater? Because she is the cousin of Krishna. And because she is Krishna's cousin, she saw him from her very birth. She was seeing Krishna all the time. And therefore, she was so overcome with ecstasy, with this opportunity to glorify Krishna, that she just got carried away in ecstasy. This ecstasy, we'll speak a little more about that ecstasy when we speak about the last verse in this series. Uniya bhaktam urukuntala kundalastvid gandhastalam shishira asakataksha mokshai ragro niriksha parita shanakaya murari amsa nurakta hridaya nidate swamalam. I lifted my face, which was encircled by my abundant locks and effulgent from the glow of my earrings reflected on my cheeks. Smiling coolly, I glanced about. Then looking around, at all the kings, I slowly placed the necklace on the shoulder of Murari, who had captured my heart. Now, it's interesting, in this verse, I just noticed it, she says that her face became effulgent from the glow of her earrings reflected from my cheeks. So the ornaments made her beautiful. But Uddhava, when he speaks about Krishna, he says, Param Param Bhushanam Bhushanangam, that Krishna is the ornament of his ornaments. Otherwise, Krishna makes his ornaments more beautiful. Krishna makes his clothing more beautiful. Krishna makes everything more beautiful by his beauty. And as we know, when Krishna was crawling around in Vrindavan, especially when he would go, because he would go and steal butter and yogurt from the houses of different elderly gopis. So the gopis came and complained to Mother Yashoda that Krishna is stealing butter. And sometimes he steals it. If it's on the floor, he just eats it. If it's higher up, he climbs up to reach it. If it's higher than that and he can't reach it, then he pokes a hole and lets the butter run down. And sometimes we keep the butter in a very dark place so he can't see it. But by the effulgence of his jewels, he finds it, even if it's in a completely dark room. But those jewels aren't effulgent. He is effulgent, and he is making the jewels effulgent. So that's the difference. We decorate ourselves. Hopefully, brahmacharis and sannyasis, not too much. We decorate ourselves to look better because we have so many faults and so many discrepancies. But Krishna, sometimes he has to hide his beauty, especially when the gopis, after the rasa dance, the gopis were looking for Krishna. And so Krishna decided to hide himself, and he hid behind some bushes. But one of the gopis saw Krishna hiding behind the bushes. And then she called all the gopis, and Krishna, he couldn't get away quick enough. So he just quickly ducked behind the bush and came out in a four-armed form. And the gopis know Krishna as being very tricky. They thought somehow or another he escaped. And so they ran up to this four-armed form of Narayan, who was actually Krishna, showing himself in that form. And have you seen Krishna? No. They didn't offer obeisances. They didn't worship the Lord. They didn't offer Purusha Shukta prayers, which is normal. If you see Narayan, you go to any temple of Narayan, they're chanting mantras all day long. And in the temples of Krishna, they're also chanting mantras, but mostly Maha Mantra, glorifying Krishna. So, but they were so overcome with ecstasy that they didn't even recognize Narayan. And then Srimati Radharani, she came upon this Narayan form because she was very nearby, but she wasn't with the other gopis. And then she saw Narayan, and as she approached Narayan, she was looking at him. And when Krishna saw her eyes and her beautiful lotus face, he could not contain his ecstasy, and two of the arms disappeared. And then and she found him. She discovered him. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, during the Anavasara, he goes to the temple of Krishna with four arms. Now, why is that place so special? Because that deity signifies that particular pastime. Therefore, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu offered obeisances, thinking of the ecstasy of the meeting of Radha and Krishna, he melted the stone. So this is Krishna, the Supreme Personality. So powerful. Tavan Mriganga Pataha Shankave Yanakadaya Nedur Natanartakyo Nanritir Gayaka Jagu. Just then, there were loud sounds of conch shells and mridanga, pataha, bheri, and anaka drums, as well as other instruments. Men and women began to dance, and singers began to sing. Ibam vitte bhagavati maeshe nipa yutapa na sehire yagyaseni spadhanto richchayatura. The leading kings there could not tolerate my having chosen the Supreme Personality of Godhead, O Draupadi. Burning with lust, they became quarrelsome. Purport. SriSriRadhaRasbihariTemple Swami comments that the contamination of lust led to the kings to quarrel foolishly with the Lord, even after seeing his supreme power. Now we live in an atmosphere of quarrel. Even everyone is fearful. Will there be World War III? Will somebody send a nuclear weapon? China versus U.S. versus this versus Russia. So many. Gaza Strip, Ukraine, all these things and many more that we don't even know about. All these conflicts, and it's all due to one thing, lust. Desire to enjoy this material world. When there's no lust, then people become very peaceful. And therefore, Krishna in the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad-gita explains in several verses, this lust is so dangerous that it burns like fire. Srila Prabhupada gave the example many times that if you throw ghee on fire, it appears to go out, but then it comes back with more force. So sometimes people think that by satisfying my material desires, my lust, then for some time they may feel some relief, but then the lust comes back even stronger. So one time, Srila Prabhupada was speaking to the devotees in the very beginning of the movement, the early years, and he was speaking about married life, and he said, and devotees, they did. This was like, before there was many rules and regulations, before there was even Mangala. And Prabhupada said that, so marriage means maximum sex life once a month for conception, for propagation. And one devotee raised his hand and said, he was amazed. They'd never heard that before. He said, Srila Prabhupada, it almost sounds like it's not worth it. And Prabhupada said, now you have understood. Of course, even though we may understand theoretically, still, if it's bothering us, of course, Srila Prabhupada said, for curbing lust, the solution is not to get married. The solution is to worship the deity. One devotee, he said, Prabhupada, I'm feeling a lot of desire. I think I should get married. And Prabhupada said, yes, you can do that. No, but the real way to get rid of it is to worship the deity. So even if you're married, the lust will still be there. But if you worship the deity, then the lust will diminish. So this is the real solution. Mantavat ratum arupya ayaratna chatushtayam shangam udhyamyam sanadhas tastab ajo chaturbuja. The Lord then placed me on his chariot, drawn by 4 most excellent horses, donning his armor and readying his bow, Shanga. He stood on the chariot, and there on the battleground he manifested his 4 arms. Purport. With 2 of his 4 arms, according to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti, Lord Krishna embraced his bride, and with the other 2, he held his bow and arrows. Otherwise, he didn't need 4 arms to fight with so many soldiers. Someone may think when they hear this, oh, he needed 4 arms. No, Krishna didn't need any arms. No, he could have just manifested his chakra and killed them all. But he wants to give the example. So, but he just has a new bride, so he manifested 2 extra arms so he could embrace his bride, and at the same time, of course, because actually they were already married. This is the way that Kshatriyas, this is the way they sometimes would get married. Just steal the bride, that means automatically they're married. And this is how Krishna, in Vrindavan Leela, how he married all the gopis. Before the gopis were married to different persons, Krishna actually married them twice. First he married them by stealing their garments, and then they had to come out of the water with no clothing. So in Vedic civilization, if a man sees a woman with no clothing, he should marry her. So he married all of them. And then again, when Lord Brahma stole the calves and the cowherd boys, Krishna manifested himself, and that was the year that all the cowherd boys got married. So actually it was Krishna that married them all. Even though his rasa was still parakiya rasa, with the gopis. So, but actually it was him that married them. So, Darukas Chodeyam Masa Kanchana Paskaram Vratam Vishtatambu Bhujam Ragji Mriganam Mrigaradiva. Daruka drove the Lord's gold-trimmed chariot as the kings looked on, O Queen, like small animals helplessly watching a lion. Te vasanajjanta rajanya nishedhum patikechana samyata udristesh basa grama simhayata harim. The king pursued the Lord. The kings pursued the Lord like village dogs chasing a lion. Some kings, raising their bows, stationed themselves on the road to stop him as he passed by. Teshanga chuta banagrai chitabhavangri kandara nipetu padane kichit eke sanchajja dudrubu. These warriors were deluged by arrows shot from the Lord's bow, Shanga. Some of the kings fell on the battleground with severed arms, legs, and necks. The rest gave up the fight and fled. Just like when Lord Nrsimhadev, after he had killed Hiranyakashipu, then all the soldiers came rushing, and he manifested unlimited arms and started killing them. And then the rest of them said, oh, this is not worthwhile. No, I'm not. So they fled. So in the same way, Kshatriyas are not supposed to flee, but up against the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they're authorized to flee because they have no other choice. Tata purim yarupatir atyalankritam Ravichchada Dvaja Patachira Toranam Kushastalim Divibhuvi Chabi Samstutam Samabhishat Taranir Ivaswa Ketanam. The Lord of the Yadus then entered his capital city, Kushastali, Dwarka, which is glorified in heaven and on earth. The city was elaborately decorated with flagpoles carrying the banners that blocked the sun, and also with splendid archways. As Lord Krishna entered, he appeared like the sun god entering his abode. Purport. The abode of the sun is in the western mountains, where he sets each evening. So, second to the last verse. Pitame pujayamasa suhit sambandhi bandavan maharha baso lankarai shayasana parichchadai. My father honored his friends, family, and in-laws with priceless clothing, jewelry, and royal beds, thrones, and other furnishings. So now, I'm just going to read this verse again. We've already recited it. With devotion, he presented the perfectly complete Lord with a number of maidservants bedecked with precious ornaments. Accompanying these maidservants were guards walking on foot and others riding elephants, chariots, and horses. He also gave the Lord extremely valuable weapons. So, this particular verse, a little more of a philosophical explanation, not just a detailed explanation. Nowadays, people are interested in information, not knowledge. People, are very good at information, processing information. So we got a lot of information about the Leela. Of course, this is Leela, so it's not just information. It's Krishna's Leela. So this whole pastime began, if we go back to the beginning of the chapter, the whole pastime began with two very beautiful verses. I'm just going to read the translations of those two verses again, which explains why what we just read is happening. This is verse 2 and 3. Feeling greatly honored, King Yudhishthira and others, freed of all sinful reactions by seeing the feet of the Lord of the universe, gladly answered his inquiries. Actually, that wasn't the one. Lord Krishna's relatives said, "O Master, how can misfortune arise for those who have even once freely drunk the nectar coming from your lotus feet? This intoxicating liquor pours into the drinking cups of the ears, having flowed from the minds of great devotees through their mouths. It destroys the embodied soul's forgetfulness of the creator of bodily existence." So everyone was glorifying Krishna. Okay, Krishna had just returned from Kurukshetra. And he wasn't gone very long, but they were suffering so much separation. And then just I want to read this other verse. The radiance of your personal form dispels the threefold effects of material consciousness. And by your grace, we become immersed in total happiness. Your knowledge is indivisible and unrestricted. By your Yogamaya potency, you have assumed this human form for protecting the Vedas, which has been threatened by time. We bow down to you, the final destination of perfect saints. So just especially on this first verse, the cups of the ears drank the nectar of flowing from the mouths of the devotees. Such a beautiful poetic. So in the ninth chapter of the ninth chapter of the third canto, beautiful verse, the 11th verse, says, Tvam bhakti yogam paribhavitya hrid saroja ase. That when people who are totally surrendered to you, paribhavita, they're totally surrendered to you, and they capture you within the lotus of their hearts, the lotus flower of their hearts. The heart becomes a lotus flower. In second canto of Bhagavatam, Pravishta Karnarandrena Bhavam Swanam Sororuham, that Krishna, the message of Krishna enters into the ears and penetrates down to the heart. The heart opens up like a lotus flower and becomes the proper sitting place for the Supreme Personality of Godhead in His original form. And the devotee can relish that relationship. So, and then it says that Shutekshana Patta Anunat Pumsam. It says, and then seeing through their ears. The devotees, they see through their ears. They don't see, these eyes are very defective. Srila Prabhupada said many times, what you see is very limited, and it's also illusory. But if you see through the ears, pashanti jnana chakshushaha, as Krishna says in Bhagavad-gita, if you see through knowledge, then you see very clearly. And the best eyes, premamjana trudita bhakti vilochanena, that the best eyes, vilokayanti, the best wonderful, beautiful eyes are the eyes, vilokayanti, the eyes of the heart. The eye of the heart. But the eye of the heart, in order to open it up, chetodarpanam arjanam bhavamahadvagni, you have to cleanse the heart. And then auspiciousness will come. And then when you make vidyavadu jivanam, when you make the holy name of the Lord your constant companion, then the bliss, transcendental bliss expands unlimitedly, and every step your consciousness is more absorbed in Krishna until you're completely bathed in the purification of the holy name. Then the vision of the heart becomes possible. So I referred back to these verses, because this is why that Draupadi, because she's asking all these queens, how did you get married? Now, getting married, of course, in modern society, people spend a lot of money for arranging beautiful marriages and everything. It's not such. It's a cultural thing. But when, just like in Chaitanya Bhagavat, when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu got married, it was very beautiful, great marriage. But Vrindavan Das Thakur criticizes the residents of Navadvip for arranging all these big, opulent marriages. But he speaks so many verses on the Lord's opulent marriage, because everything the Lord does, those opulent marriages of ordinary people, is just pride and elegance and displaying one's wealth, etc. But in the Lord's case, it's glorification. So therefore, Draupadi wanted to hear about marriage, even though the Bhagavatam in many verses discourages marriage, in the sense that, or if you do it, understand what it is. Of course, it can be very wonderful. Srila Prabhupada said, if the marriage is like Lakshmi and Narayan, it's very wonderful. But if it's what it usually is, it's also meant to be that way, which means after living together for 25, 30 years, sometimes 40 years, sometimes 50 years, No. Sometimes people celebrate silver anniversary, golden anniversary, which is very wonderful nowadays. Before, it would have been, why are you dragging on? Are you a Dhritarashtra? No. Just like Srila Prabhupada said, 5,000 years ago, there was one Dhritarashtra, and now there's one in every home. No. So, it's not so glorious to have all this golden anniversary. But nowadays, it's very glorious that people actually don't get divorced, don't separate. No. So it's very glorious. So, but in the case of the Lord, so actually after 25, 30 years, you're supposed to kind of get tired of one another a little bit, like the same thing every day. But attachment is so strong that it doesn't happen that way. But because if there's Krishna consciousness, then one can actually come out of that marriage, not out of frustration, not out of lust for another marriage, but you come out of it out of understanding. So therefore, there's always some difference of opinion between husband and wife in most cases. And if there's not, there may be the danger of over-attachment. So Krishna consciousness takes care of all of this. So in the purport here, two things I wanted to emphasize. Not much time left, but there's all these other verses. Supreme Lord is Purna. Om Purnamada Purnamidam. He's complete. No. Everything is perfect within him. Nothing is subtracted from him. So the king is giving all these things to the Lord. But the Lord doesn't need anything. He's Atmaram. He's completely satisfied. He's complete within himself. But he's accepting because of the word here in the verse, very important word, bhakti taha, out of devotion. He did it with devotion. So there are some examples here. No, it says, it refers, of course, to the famous verse in Bhagavad-gita that we patram pushpam palam toyam yome bhakta prayachiti taraham bhaktupahritam ashname prayatatmanaha. That the important thing is prayatatmanaha and that bhakti. There must be bhakti, and that bhakti must be dedicated to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That same verse is also quoted in the Bhagavatam, and in the Bhagavatam where it's quoted in the purports given by our acharyas, it says that sometimes a devotee will offer flowers to the Lord, and the Lord will eat ashnami. He eats them. It says he eats them, and he does. He physically eats them because he's feeling such ecstasy. He feels great ecstasy when his devotee offers him something with devotion. And we can refer to when Krishna visited the cottage of Vidura. Now, Krishna, sometimes he would visit a great palace, but he preferred to go to the cottage of Vidura rather than to visit the opulent palace of Duryodhana. He went to see Vidura. So when he arrived, Vidura was not there. And Vidura's wife, he came to the door and he called out. And he announced himself, "I'm Krishna." She came out practically with no clothing. And then out of ecstasy, she just heard Krishna's voice. She didn't even think about it, just like the wives of the Brahmins. When they heard that Krishna was nearby, they ran out. They didn't fix their hair. They didn't, they just ran out to see Krishna. Normally, if we go to see Krishna in the temple, we want to be properly dressed. Everything should be proper. But out of ecstasy, they could not do this. Out of ecstasy, Lakshmana, ecstasy. She was speaking on and on. It wasn't appropriate. It wasn't proper. but she could not avoid it. She was in such great ecstasy. So Vidura's wife, then she thought, I must offer something to Krishna. There were some bananas. So, and she was feeling such ecstasy. Here's Krishna, and she's sitting right beside Krishna, and not even properly dressed. And in some commentators say she had no clothing. But in any case, of course, that's difficult because Krishna would never, just like in the battle with Lord Shiva, when Krishna saw the naked form of a woman, he stopped. He couldn't look at it. And so, anyway, whatever her state was, it wasn't proper. And she began to offer the bananas, but she threw away the fruits. She didn't throw them away, actually, she was putting them down. And she was giving the skins. And then sometimes Prabhupada would say that Vidura did it, but that was actually his wife. And then Vidura came with Narada Muni. And he saw his wife giving banana peels, and so he objected. What are you doing? But then Narada Muni said, actually, she's in ecstasy. So Vidura, he began to feed the bananas to Krishna. But Krishna said, where is the wonderful taste of those skins? He was feeling so much devotion. But actually, he was feeling great pleasure, equal pleasure with the skins and the bananas. But when the bananas didn't have the taste of the skins, he said, what happened? Why have I lost this taste? So that means that Vidura's wife had so much great devotion for Krishna. So this is another case. Another case is Sudam Brahman. Sudam Brahman had some broken rice. He offered it to Krishna. And Krishna took it. He took it, but he took just one grain, then another grain. And after 2 grains, Rukmini said, don't take any more, because I will not be able to compensate him. Cannot compensate him. Then, and also she was thinking, this raw rice is not good for his digestion. Of course, Krishna doesn't have to worry about digestion problems. It's like we see he eats with his eyes, So usually when we make an offering, he eats with his eyes. He may be eating with other, we don't know, but he's definitely eating with his eyes. He doesn't get indigestion. So actually, Sudam Brahman became Shuklambar Brahmachari. And with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu one time dancing in ecstasy, Shuklambar had just come from begging. And he would beg, and people saw him, when he would beg in Navadvip, people saw him, he had tattered, torn cloth. They would just give him the oldest thing they had. So he gave that to Lord Chaitanya. And Vrindavan Thakur says, even if you offer the most opulent of all foodstuffs to the Lord, but not with sufficient devotion, he will not be happy. He will not accept it. But Shuklambar, Sudam, all these devotees, Lakshmana, when they make this wonderful offering out of devotion, it doesn't matter what it is. But of course, we should not think like that. We should not think, oh, well, I'll offer with devotion and and I'll save some money by offering something that's not so expensive. No. Because Krishna will accept it because I'm offering with devotion. But if you think like that, then automatically you don't have devotion. Because a devotee should offer his very life, just like Bali Maharaj. He offered his very existence to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because he offered everything. And that is our duty. These examples are there, all these examples, and what we're hearing here, and into so many different places. It is indicative that one must offer everything. Out of the 26 qualities of a Vaishnava, 25 of them, many other people have them. There are many poetic people, there are many friendly people, there are many people who are detached. But, and those 25 qualities become exalted when the most important quality, the Swarup Lakshana, the main quality of surrender to Krishna is there, then all the other qualities become purified, perfect. But without that surrender, you may be the best poet. Just like the Digvijay Pandit, who before Nimai Pandit recited so many wonderful verses. And then Lord Chaitanya corrected him because he did it out of pride. And so sometimes we may have some pride and Krishna will knock it down. And we must receive therefore we must receive whatever Krishna gives us. Tattenu kampam susamikshmana bunjama evatmikritam vipakam. We must receive it in whatever form it comes and think, this is exactly what I need. What Krishna is giving me is exactly what I need. Just like if you go to the doctor, you don't tell him what to give you. No. Oh, I don't like this medicine. No, I want a tastier medicine. No. Sometimes when people go to the doctor and when he gives his verdict, stop eating this, I feel better. No, I think it was just but anyway, so the point is that we must surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So because of all these long verses, and trying to give some little explanation, by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, we've run out of time, and since we have an event at 10 o'clock, there is no time for questions today. So we'll stop here. Thank you all very much for your kind attention. Srila Prabhupada ki, SriSriRadhaRasbihariTemple ki, Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman ki, Shri Gaurnitai ki, Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda ki, Nitai Gaur Premanandi.